or you can use a VPN or an ad block. Yo, catch these sneaky ass hands, dude. You know this. You know I just fucking destroyed your worldview. Not a big deal. Anyway, let's hit that fucking ad break here, and we'll talk about the evils of communism in Florida real quick. Again,
that is, this is an important time.
Everybody wants me to talk about it.
For next year, at which time Governor Ron Desantis has been out of his way to say CRT, critical race theory, will not be taught. But he didn't stop there. Listen.
We have a number of people in Florida, particularly southern Florida, who've escaped totalitarian regimes, who've escaped communist dictatorships to be able to come to America. We want all students to understand the difference. Why would somebody flee across shark-infested waters, say leaving from Cuba to come to southern Florida?
So he understands that maybe this story, teaching the evils of communism and Marxism, matters to people like you. Why?
Absolutely. And you know, bravo. Every single governor in this country should follow suit what DeSantis is doing. Because the problem that we have here is that half of our teenagers, according to the latest survey, believe that communism or socialism is good. And most of them don't know what's the difference between the Declaration of Independence and the Communist Manifesto. You see, I am the daughter of political refugees. Everyone that I know that surrounds me in my district understands what DeSantis is saying. It's oppression, it's exile, it's death. And our kids, right, the American-born kids, don't know what that means. So it's time for us to teach them that Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Chavez, those people are murderers.
But what also is
yeah, dude. What's happening in the American education is that there isn't enough there isn't enough coverage of communism being bad. That's the problem. You know, I'm glad that we finally arrived at the most important issue in our education structure is that, you know, in the way that our education system works is that people don't think Che Guevara is bad enough.
It's important too in most people's background. You know, you do read Mein Kampf in school. It doesn't mean that you like Hitler or a Nazi. You read about these people because you want to be exposed to it. You don't want to be shut off from it. Where do you draw the line between reading about these evil people in history and at the same time learning what not?
What? He read Mein Kampf in high school? What? He did? That's kind of weird. Like, come on. I mean, it was... What is this? They're citing polls like this. More than a third of millennials approve of communism. Yeah, here's what it is, boys. Like, don't make capitalism so fucking openly destructive to the younger generation. Like, that's one way that you could have fucking stopped, you know, having people recognize that capitalism is undeniably failing. Okay? That's one way. You make my job easier to, like, radicalize little kids just straight up by just making the situation so much worse for them, where they recognize that, like, the future they have in front of them is never going to be as, like, wonderful or as mythological and as great as the past. The economic opportunities afforded to the younger generation is devastating in comparison to, like, the older generation, who then fucking turn around and act like, you know, the situation is still the same, that you can buy a house for, like, you know, your comfortable little nest egg that you've generated from going and getting, like, a union job at a factory. Like, people who finally have, like, a little bit of capital accumulation after a pandemic are trying to buy a house for the first time ever, and they're getting priced out of this, like, insane housing market for a multitude of different reasons. But, like, there's no quicker way to, like, radicalize people, then show them that like they're permanently going to be renters for the rest of their lives. They are going to have another master on top of their bosses, on top of their managers, on top of the capital owners sitting atop ivory towers that will never ever step foot on an assembly line or never ever step foot in that same corporate structure, if you want to talk about white collar workers. And then you get upset that like people are like, well, this sucks. We were dealt a fucking shitty hand. Elvira Salazar proposed a 30-year pathway to citizenship after her parents got it as being refugees. Yeah, there's nothing more disgusting to me than reactionary Cubans who fucking turn around and spit on every other fucking every other economic migrant, every other refugee in this country, specifically other Latin American refugees. Like, you are a dog shit, horrible monster. And this attitude permeates through some older reactionary Cubans. Like, they literally just are like, hey, we fucking got special privileges, so we're different than the rest of the economic migrants or the rest of the refugees that are coming in over the southern border. Like, it's so disgusting. It's so conservative. How the fuck do you not recognize your place? Like, how? How do you not see that? Like, the opportunities afforded to you should be afforded to everyone. It's so nasty. Venezuelans do this shit too. Yeah. Straight up.
To do.
Well, you draw the line is that you give them the empirical evidence. You explain what Madison and Jefferson and Washington did, and you also explain with no
From what I understand, by the way, younger Cubans living in Cuba do not have such a negative opinion, and it's mostly older Cubans that feel as though there was a time that was the older Cubans that did not have the opportunity to come to America, or those Cubans who immigrated to America have an incredibly negative view. This is at least from what I've seen from talking to Cubans that still have relatives in Cuba, and younger Cubans that still live in Cuba that don't have such a overtly negative association with like their current regime. And no matter what happens, a big part of the reason why they're so fucked is literally because of American embargoes, which are unethical, inhumane, and the only two countries, and this might surprise you, in the latest what was it? It was like, what was the latest vote on lifting the embargo on Cuba? There was a recent vote to lift in a UN resolution to lift the or rather to condemn United States embargo on Cuba. Every single state voted to condemn the United States except for two states. You want to know who those two states were? Just try to guess. Try to guess which two states wanted to maintain the embargo on Cuba. 184 to 2, by the way. Not states like American states. I mean like countries, nation states. It was the United States and Israel, okay? That's it. And everyone else was like, this is fucked up. Lift the embargo, you fucking assholes. What is Joe Biden doing? Why hasn't he done this? I lived in Cuba for a little. Young Cubans understand how much better they are with the current regime compared to the past. Anyway. How do you feel about spreading information to little kids who can't make sound decisions or be able to debate with you and just accept what you say because they like you and take advantage of this to implant things in their heads like a cult leader? That could be said for any kind of media whatsoever. So I try to be as good as possible with the information that I'm disseminating. Also, assuming that like the little kids were going to have a productive experience by debating is silly and is overall a self-report from Big Tick. But thank you. Anyway. We can think for ourselves, you fuckwit. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a self-report. He can't think for himself, and he gets all of his knowledge and information most likely from right-wing commentators, which is precisely why he is fearful that, like, a left-wing commentator is capable of doing the same thing that the right-wing commentator who brainwashed him to other people. That's what it is. That's all it is. Also, little kids. I have one of the oldest audiences on Twitch, but hey, who knows? Pure projection. Let's keep going.
Without whitewashing what Che did. You know, let me just give you a little example. Che Guevara, when he invaded Cuba, you know what they would do? They would conduct...
That's so interesting. When Che Guevara invaded Cuba, what was the regime in Cuba at the time? Like, what did it look like? Invaded Cuba. She said invaded Cuba. Is she like a Batista supporter? This is what I'm always confused about. When people say like, oh, Che Guevara bad, Fidel Castro bad, it's like, do you agree with Batista? Is that what you're trying to say right now? Because that's kind of weird. Like, are you saying that Cuba was better overall as a fucking slave colony for the United States, for sugar and casinos for the mafia? Was that better overall when it was just basically a fucking little island that Americans could just exploit for its natural resources and labor force and you know, overall lack of aversion to slavery? And is that what that is? Like,
they would kill you on the firing squad, and then after that they would conduct a trial. So they kill you first, and then they did trial after. Most people don't know. They think that Che, oh my God, Che is the best. He is going to come and liberate us. And it's all a lie. And then that's what very concerning, that we're not teaching our children the reality of what they did.
But what just shows parents got to get...
all we have to do
is get involved with his Board of Education.
All we have to do is just show...
I want one person to just be like, okay, do you think Batista was good then? I just want to understand, like, when people say like, oh, Che Guevara was a murderer, he murdered people, he lined up people and like murdered them. Okay, true. Did you like Batista then? Like, how would you have changed the fascist government in power at the time? Like, are you actually saying that like that was good?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you. What were you asking me?
I was just saying, no, get involved with your Board of Education too, right?
Get involved, but at the same time, make sure that we are not whitewashing socialism. Unfortunately, in this country, socialism and democratic socialism, and I encounter many of my colleagues on the other side, on the floor of the United States Congress, really believing that this is the way to go. That the American philosophy, culture, and the American history, it's evil, that we are a horrible nation, and the other side, you know, Stalin and Fidel, those are the good guys. Those are the ones that will bring equality, will bring happiness to everyone. That's a lie. That's not true. So we got to teach it the way it is.
Right. You're not going to have the problem.
And then parents will decide.
Right. You're not going to have that problem in Florida, thanks to your governor. Thanks, Congresswoman. Appreciate it.
I just want to know. I really want to understand, like, how do you liberate an entire country under a brutal fascist regime without guns and without murdering people? Like, how? And if that's the case, like, if you are a humanist and believe that like all instances of murder across the board are unwarranted, bad, no matter what happens, then do you have a similar approach to Nazi Germany? Do you have a similar approach to the Civil War? Do you believe that like the war of northern aggression should never have happened? Like, how do we manage some of these conflicts? Good thing nobody fucking said that, you blockhead. I mean, but like, what are you saying, really? If you're It's like when these like victims of communism memorials literally feature like actual Nazi death squads and portray them as like victims of communism. Okay, like what are you supposed to do with like the Vitesse Rend, who operated to find and collaborate with the Nazis to find Jews and murder them? Like how do you deal with that? Are you supposed to just ask them fucking nicely and just be like, "Hey man, can you please not expose Jews that are in hiding to get them to, you know, be sent to concentration camps or just like straight up murdered?" What are we supposed to do? There are a few of those Nazi memorials in Canada. It's very funny and cool and fun. Yay, what a great country. Yeah, no, I know. What's his face has like really funny threads about them that they find like all of these like victims of communism memorials that just straight up have like actual literal Nazis like just straight up fascists and memorialize them as like victims to the horrifying communist regime. I have no issue with the revolution. However, trying to kill people fleeing is unexcusable, or maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that like fucking everything Che did was sick, okay, or Fidel Castro. Absolutely not. But making a blanket statement about like how much murder Che engaged in without talking about what was going on in Cuba at the time is kind of stupid. You know what I mean? It's like saying America invaded a foreign land and bombed so many different parts of said foreign land in this like brutal campaign, okay, where they murdered like fleeing soldiers without telling you like what this actually is. It's so disingenuous to just mention that without adding the context that like I'm actually talking about Nazi Germany. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like if you were talking about World War II and D-Day without mentioning that it's World War II in D-Day. Feel me? Comparing Stalin to Fidel is very ridiculous. If anything, Cubans continue to enjoy a lot of civil and some political rights. I mean, yeah, they definitely still suffer. They don't have like the social liberalism that we enjoy in the form of like freedom of information, things like that, or at least the notion that they have like some sort of freedom of information. But as far as their economic circumstances goes, like a big chunk of the issues stem from America restricting trade and having this like insane embargo on the island. Anyway, Bush, Fidel tortured innocents, people and fleeing soldiers. We should be teaching the real side of America's history. Anyway. Cuba gave us Ana de Armas. Honestly, I think we can look past their problems with this simple fact. True. You make a very good point. There is something else I wanted to talk about, but I just cannot remember what I was going to talk about. I just like my brain has stopped functioning. But I guess we can move on to Britney Spears' conservatorship.